Hey guys, welcome. Fedora Friday number 19. Fedora Friday number 19. Hopefully you guys are having a great day. And hopefully this time slot that we're kind of settling into here for the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time has not created problems. I just figured that this would be a lot easier for those folks on the West Coast of the US to kind of tune in. Again, I'll take any and all feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. So that way you guys can let me know, what you guys think of the time slot. Anyway, hopefully you guys are having a great day, having a great week, having a great start to 2026. We got my man Ian. Ian, how's it going, my friend? Hope all is well over in London. Just again, I got to get back there, man. Tell you, I had a lot of fun in London. So, hopefully, Ian, 2026 is going well for you so far. Welcome, you guys. I have no idea if we're going to have anybody show up to the stream. Again, I know Fedora Friday, given my lack of preparation, given that I kind of pick and choose the movies of the 11th hour, it's hard for me to let you guys and my network know what movies I'm going to be, watching. Let alone, reviewing and all that good stuff. But this was a movie that I knew about. I never saw. I was, Ian, excellent. I'm so glad to hear that. Also glad. The movie for today was a movie that I've heard about. Probably more in the remake, right? Incarnation, but it was a movie that was suggested to me last night when I went out with some of my drinking over buddies. And I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what? That I've heard that being a good hack movie. And then, I was just like, wait a minute. The 1990 version, what ended up being 1999 version, I don't remember being that hat focused. Again, I don't even know if I even saw the movie in its entirety. I just never thought of it as a hat movie. But it dawned on me that it was a remake. And then maybe the gentleman, George is his name. George was talking about this 1968 version. And sure enough, I'm able to find it and view it for free on YouTube, actually. So that's something you guys want to catch. It was on YouTube for free. And I was like, wow, right from the get-go, you get to see some interesting hats. So, I was really psyched about that movie right from the get-go. We got my man, Nathan. Nathan, how's it going? AKA the Tuckster. Hopefully that's all cool. We got the Tuckster, not just a Tuckster, as Morgan would say. But yeah, I was just talking about how I came about the movie for today. And I had vaguely recalled maybe seeing the 1999 version. That's right, the Tuckster. I love it. You gotta love that. Again, I know not everybody's a big fan of having nicknames, but somebody like myself, I don't take myself too serious. I've gotten the Lukester, I've gotten Luker, I've gotten all sorts of versions. You know what I mean? Obviously, the Star Wars references and all that. So, I try not to take myself too seriously, but I can't hold everybody else to that same standard. But I'm glad everything's cool with Tuckster. But yeah, so it's really interesting. And again, just happened to have run into George. It was the first time in a little bit that he was out, and he recommended this movie. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to check it out. Nathan says, I haven't seen the 1968 version. I've seen the 1999 remake several times. Now, I know that Pierce Brosnan does wear a hat in that movie, as far as I can tell from looking at some of the photos. But I don't think it's as prominent. And it could just be a function of them making it to be a little bit more contemporary, right? Pierce Brosnan has a great, head of hair. Maybe they're like, we're not going to waste that, right? So it was one of those things. I'm like, okay, I understand. But who knows? Maybe you guys who've seen the 99 remake could tell me otherwise. Maybe it's completely a big hat movie. I just don't know. Again, I don't even remember ever seeing it per se. I didn't know about Pierce Brosnan being in the movie. So I'm like, I'm a big fan of Pierce Brosnan, obviously James Bond, and then Remington Steele. For all you guys, they're my age and maybe grew up watching Remington Steele on TV. But yeah, great show, by the way. So yeah, this movie was just a really pleasant surprise. So again, I don't know if anybody's going to join us, but if they don't, then I'll just get right into the photos. This doesn't have to be long. Again, this is my first time watching this 1968 version, so maybe my analysis won't be as in depth. Maybe it'll be more focused on the photos and my general impressions. But I have a feeling I'm going to watch this movie again pretty soon, right? So Steve McQueen, right? Like, come on now. How much more iconic can you get than Steve McQueen, right? Yeah, we'll talk about a little bit more about that in depth. But yeah, let me just bring up the slideshow. Again, if somebody ends up joining us, you're welcome to. Again, my network always has a link to join, even if you didn't watch the movie and you just want to comment, general impressions. But yeah, really cool movie. Let me finish wiping my glasses up here, and then we'll bring up the slideshow. So obviously, as we talked about, I did find this photo from the 1999 remake. Right, this is Pierce Brosnan. You might know him as from a lot of roles, but definitely from his short stint as James Bond. Hey, we got my man Nathan. Nathan, how's it going, my friend? Let me get out so we can chat a little bit here. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going? Good. How are you?
Doing well. Still on the road, right?
Yeah. Just got out. So I'm gonna be making Fridays. I'm usually in the office a little bit in the morning, and then I go out. Most of the day I'm on the road on Fridays.
Yeah.
Making some visits, checking on the folks, and maybe I'll make a pizza or two. I don't know.
That sounds great. Yeah, always.
How about yourself?
Pizza any days, but on a Friday it just seems right.
Yeah, that's our busy day, man. Friday night pizza. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Well, again, I was out with the boys last night, as I mentioned earlier on, and I think I mentioned to you guys yesterday because we were talking about National Hat Day, right? I called it National Felt Hat Day, but I think it's just called National Hat Day. And I wanted to add the felt in there because, it just seemed like I wanted to especially celebrate the felt hats or the fine hats, however you want to refer to it. But yeah, it was nice to kind of see the folks online rallying around and celebrating the day and posting their photos. Obviously, for a lot of us, or maybe most of us, wearing a hat is like an everyday thing. It's not necessarily something we do once a year. But when we do get a day like that, it kind of, you stick your chest out a little bit extra, right?
Yeah. I appreciate everybody's photos, and I like seeing all the varieties. I think myself, I probably wore about 3 hats yesterday for some reason, but some days are like that.
Yeah.
You kind of start out with one, and then halfway through the day I'm like, oh, let me try this other one, and
yeah.
But that's the fun part,
Yeah, I know I had at least 2 on because I remember I posted a photo because I was wearing my black Homburg, my Lock and Co Homburg that I got from Paul, and when I was gonna go out to go with my drinking buddies, I knew I was going to wear my blue peacoat. So I said, all right, well, let me, even though black goes with everything, I figured, okay, I have a matching hat. I have something that, that I can go and coordinate with to match the blue peacoat. So I grabbed my Kubra Style Master, and I posted some photos on Facebook, but I did show you guys the Lock and Co when I was wearing it earlier. So yeah, some days it is just like that. I mean, I don't know about you, Nathan, but sometimes I'll have, depending on, the okayness of folks around me, I'll have my fedoras just laying around like strategically, right? So I might have one in the bedroom on the 3rd floor. I might have one in the main level. And then obviously down here, it's kind of like my man cave. I have all my fedoras, well, the majority of them all around here, but pretty much this whole basement area is kind of full of fedoras. And then obviously we have some flat caps and all that stuff, only because sometimes what happens is, either I'm wearing the hat on, on my head, or I'll set it down, and maybe I know I got to go run out and check the mail. So it's nice to have a flat cap or a fedora around. That way you can just grab it, throw it on your head, and then go check the mail in style, right?
Yeah, I've been thinking about storage recently because I've got some on a hat rack, and then I keep others in the boxes. And then I've got I'm looking at I would like to get like some maybe vintage, like a hat stand,
Yeah.
I know the proper way, is to kind of turn over on its crown.
Right.
But sometimes depending on what kind of hat band you have, it ends up kind of gravity taking over, and then, so I
Yeah.
noticed behind you. So what do you use to do that on your
These,
wall there?
yeah. So these, they're called command hooks.
Oh, you
I
got
don't
those.
know.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're very easy to find on Amazon. And what they do is, because I rent, these things are removable without
Yeah.
damaging the paint. Now, again, it's not guaranteed, because depending on, how much oomph and how weak, like, the paint behind there, like, I have no idea about how great this paint is, but allegedly, these things are supposed to be really okay for removing without damaging the paint. So that way it doesn't become a problem when you have to kind of, turn the place back over. But yeah, these are pretty cheap, and they're pretty, like, low, like, these are clear, and it
Yeah.
just provides a decent hook for me to just latch onto. I know not everybody does that. Some people have different mechanisms, but I don't actually know. That actually might be a really good question for the panel, to see if anybody does this. What do they use if they don't use a command hook?
Yeah, and I've heard with that, like you have to, because gravity. So sometimes if you have them hanging, sometimes it's good to kind
Correct.
of
You want to turn
to
them.
turn it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm playing with the idea, and I really don't have I think it's called a conformer, where you can
Yeah.
put on your head and get the exact shape of your head. But I was thinking about either buying one or trying to make arrangements to make a hat block that fits my shape of my head.
Yeah.
And as long as if I have one as a template, I can make more with some wood, just maybe even
Yeah.
like a 1 or 2 inch slab of wood, and
Yeah.
make more of those. And that way I could fit it inside the hat, and I could drill a couple holes in it, and then I could put that on the wall. Now that would
Seems
keep the
smart.
shape of my head in
Yeah.
that hat while it's stationary. So I'm kind of like trying to
Yeah.
figure out, like, what's the best practical way to do that.
I like that idea. Again, I don't know. Obviously, that's not something I've tried, but it just reminds me of, like, the shoe trees, right? If you have a nice pair of leather shoes that you want to try to
Yes.
keep in shape, you'll throw some pine wood trees, shoe trees in there. That way you can deal with odor as well as keep the shape of the shoe. And it's supposed to be really good. I actually use I have a couple pair of Chelsea boots that I really favor.
Mhm.
And I use shoe trees in them, and it really is helpful. I mean, I don't know, because I've never not used the shoe trees in those shoes, but I did notice in my other shoes that I don't use shoe trees. There is a difference. I'm somebody that has sweaty feet. I like to walk a lot. Those shoe trees really do a good job.
Yeah, I do have several shoe trees, and I agree. Like they hold the shoe better.
Yeah,
I've like the boots, vintage boots and things that I've bought. I could tell for sure when they've used shoe trees in there to kind of
yeah,
hold the form. So yeah, it's a very, very similar idea. Now
yeah,
I could buy, or I do have a couple of, like, they're actually like hat stretchers, but while
yeah.
I'm not wearing it, I'll put that in there, not really like cranking down on it to stretch it, but
Right.
just kind of hold it in place,
Yeah,
um, to
yeah. I think
keep
that's an
that
excellent
form.
idea. Yeah, I like the way
Yeah.
you think. Because and who knows? Like I said, I don't think I've ever really done an inventory. But that's something that's definitely probably a good idea for even just even if it wasn't a complete show idea, at least a discussion on one of our Hat Tuesday shows to talk about, hey, well, how do you guys store your hats? Right, and because not everybody believes in. Because I did notice that there is a general consensus that storing your hat on its crown. There are a decent number of folks that will not do that, and their claim is that you could wear out your hat. I guess meaning that the weight on the crown is not good for a hat. And I don't know, because I
Yeah.
don't have any idea. I think Kevin is somebody that is the proponent of putting it on the crown, if I recall correctly.
I
But I
think
have
so.
heard others, like on the Fedora Lounge, say, "Well, I'll never do that. I don't want the weight of the hat on the crown for yada 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 reasons I couldn't remember."
Yeah, I mean, I store, like I said, I've got hat racks. I store them on the crown. I store them on the brim. I
Yeah,
stack some. I keep some in the box. Like it's all over the place. So
yeah,
I need to come up with something that's a little more consistent. And I really like the idea of a hat stand. And I have
yeah.
seen like some. I saw it somewhere online where it was a wall mount, but it kind of like come out from the wall, and it was like a sphere, and you would kind of
Yeah,
just hang your hat on there. So
yeah,
a lot of that I do. It's an interesting topic. Yeah, maybe we'll throw that on the calendar at
yeah,
some point. Like I say, it could certainly be the first kind of segment, of a Hat Tuesday for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. For me, it was something about scale because when I committed to doing the command hooks, that's when I kind of already started getting. I think at that point I already had like 30 fedoras. Not so many flat caps, but now that I'm kind of like between the flat caps and the fedoras, I'm probably like 60 plus. This is something that will scale because I'm kind of using one level of my wall, and then I have a top level, and then obviously I can work the bottom here, but I'd probably start with top first. And obviously the rest of the wall, in terms of like, because I kept it kind of at the 6 foot level here. I just decided that's the level I want to keep them. No real other reason other than that. Yeah, I will. I could definitely bring it up another foot to get another row of fedoras, and obviously it wouldn't all come out on camera. But ultimately, I just figured, okay, if I decide to collect more fedoras, which I ended up doing, this will be something that I could scale up.
Now, I have one flat cap. Where do you get your flat caps from? Just all over the
You know
place,
what?
or?
I've gotten most of my flat caps. I found them at thrift stores, to be honest.
Okay,
Uh,
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
So, there is a gentleman that I believe sells. So if you're somebody that wants to buy new, I believe the gentleman's Polish. His last name, I believe, is a Polish name. It's with an S. And I'm not going to, I'm not, my Polish isn't so bad, but I just can't remember. So I don't want to butcher his name. But he's been recommended on the Fedora Lounge. And I believe Robert is one of the folks that likes to buy his flat caps. And he has a shop. He sells via Amazon, but I think he also has a website. And according to the folks that are in the know, or at least way more in the know than I am, it's a quality to price ratio that really can't be beat. And obviously, a lot of folks are fans. Like I have some Boston Scally caps. Those are, I wouldn't say they're high quality, but they are well regarded by a lot of folks that are into the flat caps. And I have a couple of those. And usually, again, I find them at thrift stores because they just seem to be really, like, fedoras are pretty, you can find some pretty cheap fedoras, but flat caps are basically, you can't afford not to buy them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've seen several vendors, and I'm not really in the flat cap world, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I wore one recently, and I'm like, okay, well, this is something kind of quick to throw on, and it's certainly different.
Yeah.
They're very comfortable. I mean, at least the one that I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I could see myself maybe buying, two or three just to kind
Yeah.
of mix things up a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I would recommend them. It's definitely, I will try to find out that gentleman's name. It might just be as easy as asking Robert in the group chat, but
yeah,
that way you can dip your toe in. The nice thing as well is that, like for me with London, I was able to bring a cheap flat cap that would do the trick, so I could have something on my head. So that I could travel back with the fedoras that Paul had for me. So it
yeah.
was functionally for travel. It was really good.
Yeah, I found, and I was on Paul's website, and I don't have a Lock and Co. And I know I've heard that name kind of thrown around in the hat circles, but I just don't have one. And
Yeah,
I don't have a black fedora. Surprisingly, I don't. But
yeah,
he found a used one. He refurbished it. It was on the site, and I called him, and I was like, okay, hold that hat for me because it was
yeah,
my size. It was black, and it was a Lock and Co. So I thought it would be nice to kind of the opportunity to get that in my collection. And I did. Hopefully, in the next few weeks, we'll have the topic on Hat Tuesday. The idea of like a hat budget,
yeah,
and I think that's an excellent topic because you can kind of get into you know, you mentioned like secondhand.
Correct.
You've got your run of the mill brick and mortar retail stores. You've got
Right.
custom. You've got numerous hat companies now that are on social media. Then you've
Yeah.
got the quality discussion. So like I think the idea of like a budget, like what's your hat budget, or
Yeah.
what should a beginner pay, or
Yeah.
what is a custom cost, or what's a good retail, flavor. So it's a good topic. I hope we get into it over the next few weeks on the Hat Tuesday. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
um, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna get on the road here. I look forward to your analysis of the Thomas Crown affair. And I heard you say it was available on YouTube. I did not know that, so
Yeah.
I will watch it this weekend because I've seen
Yeah.
the remake. Whenever I see the remake on TV, I watch it. I mean, it's just one of
Yeah.
those movies you can just kind of watch over and over, and it's fun.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'll make sure I watch it this weekend. But I look
Sounds
forward to
good.
your review. And thanks for all you do, Luke. Keep it up.
Hey, my pleasure, my friend. Thanks for stopping by. And like I said, I'll see you the next one.
All right, have a good one.
You too, man. See ya. All right, Nathan Tuck. Always good to see Nathan. Nathan has really great questions. Like I said, like I mentioned in the previous show, he's been really helpful for just some of the idea generations for some of the upcoming shows. Which for me, again, one of my many weaknesses, but definitely one of the ones that impact the show is I'm just a really bad planner. Right, I'm very extemporaneous with these shows. Right, there's some planning that goes into it, right? Because I gotta make sure I see the movie. I get some photographs for you guys. So there is some planning, right? Some chat GPT work. But in terms of choosing the topic, choosing the movie, a lot of that stuff happens 11th hour, just like this movie today. And it's a gift and a curse, right? So sometimes I come across a little bit better because it's extemporaneous, but maybe I'll miss out on some details. But that's okay. You know what I mean? Like I said, every video does not have to be an opus, right? That's something that I've worked very hard to allow myself that and give myself that kind of that grace, right? Because sometimes we're getting a little too hard on ourselves, and I try not to do that too much. But yeah, thank you, Nathan, for always stopping by and having such great input. Just great questions, man. So I definitely we'll try to tackle that budget topic, Nathan, in one of the upcoming shows. And like I said, even if it's a brief discussion, I think it's worthwhile because like I said, if you're thinking about the question, you definitely submit it because it could be somebody else that doesn't want to chime in that's thinking about this very same thing. So thank you, Nathan, for volunteering that stuff. But yeah, back to the movie. I'll bring up the slideshow again. And just to kind of like just what we mentioned, Nathan mentioned that he always watches the remake. And that's what I thought. When I thought about the Thomas Crown affair, I immediately thought about Pierce Brosnan. And I was like, well, I never really seen Pierce Brosnan in a hat. Then I came across this photo in doing the research for the, I guess, the original, right? In 1968, the Steve McQueen version that we're reviewing today. And so I'm like, okay, he obviously does wear a hat here. Again, this is one of those movies I can't even recall if I've seen it. It's from 1999, but I will see it now. And if you guys tell me it's a hat movie, well, maybe I'll even review it, man, right? It's always good to see. I don't think we've had the situation where we've reviewed an original movie and then a remake, right? Because, sometimes one's a hat movie, one's not. And as far as I'm concerned, I think the original here, the 1968 one, is a hat movie. I'm not so sure about the 1999 version. And then I will share another piece of information that I uncovered, which is that they are, I guess, currently working on or about to release in the coming year yet another remake. This time, not with Pierce Brosnan or Steve McQueen, obviously, but with Michael B. Jordan, right, of Creed, right, and Black Panther, right, very well known actor, right. It's for me, I think these guys all kind of fit that Thomas Crown mold. Now that I've seen the original and I kind of got a flavor of the character, I'm like, of course, yeah, all these guys kind of have that mystique. speaking of the mystique, right? This is Steve McQueen, right? Steve McQueen is an iconic actor. Some of you guys might know him from Bullet. There's so many, he's just one of these it guys, these Hollywood it guys, in his time, right? I guess I'd say the 60s, right? For lack of better knowledge, because it just seems like that was his heyday, particularly the late 60s. And he's just one of these, like, maybe an American version of James Bond. This is kind of maybe how I would see him in this movie, except that, well, James Bond's a secret agent, right? This guy is just a millionaire who likes to steal, right? Like he's a scoundrel, a millionaire scoundrel, but very sophisticated, right? Very, very full of himself, right? Doesn't think he could ever get caught. And he's not somebody that steals because, well, he needs the money, right? He obviously does not need the money. He steals because it's almost like he's in love with the challenge, right? He's in love with the idea of outsmarting, the system, right? He thinks the system is screwed up, and he wants to kind of show that the system is screwed up by exploiting it, and obviously for his own gain. So all told, as you might expect, this is a heist movie, and the heist starts off really right from the beginning. And that's where you get a lot of the fedoras, right? So what you're seeing in the beginning is kind of Thomas Crown, played by Steve McQueen, coordinating with these four gentlemen who are all, I believe they're all four of the gentlemen are wearing hats, right? Now, there are not the traditional fedoras. They're the type of fedoras that you would see in the late 60s and maybe the 70s, right? They had the very short, stingy brim, right? Some of these are like kind of a straw material, and some of them are felt, but they're all stingy brims, right? So I felt like, again, as not being a child of the 60s, but having a little bit of knowledge about the hats of the 60s and 70s, it feels like the wardrobe is true to life. And again, they could have decided not to have these gentlemen wear hats, but I believe they were all purposeful, right? One, it made them all look badass, right? So they're all wearing the suits, they're wearing the shades, and they got some sort of hat on. And they're obviously going to go and pull off this caper. And the caper is essentially stealing a Monet. I believe it's a Monet, right? A piece of art, a valuable art. And I believe they're stealing it from a bank, right? The bank is owning it. It owns the piece of art, or is holding it, right? Probably for some other very rich person. And they're going to steal it at the request, right, of Thomas Crown, who's coordinating everything. So you can see these gentlemen coordinating via a payphone with Thomas Crown in the very beginning. They don't know who Thomas Crown is. They don't know anything about him. They've never even seen him before. But essentially, they're there to do this job to be able to, I guess, get a payday. And it's really cool, right? So it's very like Ocean's 11, right? And it even has, it has some of that feel of Ocean's 11. So all you guys that appreciate, that maybe not seen this movie, and maybe like those caper movies, those heist movies like Ocean's 11, I think you'll like this, right? It has kind of like a combination of Ocean's 11 and James Bond. Really, really cool. And then again, I mentioned the four gentlemen. I don't think I have photos of all four gentlemen, but you can see here some of the hats here by the folks that are pulling off this caper here, right? And you can see they're causing a panic, in this bank. I believe it's a bank, and they're just getting this thing done. So as you can see, just a lot of chaos, a lot of action, and ultimately we go back, to the star of the show, which is Steve McQueen, right? Again, a sophisticated guy. You can tell by the way he's dressed, right, and the way he speaks, the confidence that he has about him, that this is not no ordinary crook, right? This is a guy that doesn't have to steal. He's very well connected, right? He uses his affluence to be able to help him get away with these crimes. And again, he does it not because he needs the money, but he loves the challenge. He loves showing what's wrong with the system, which, again, depending on how you feel about it. I know not everybody would love a character like this, but this is indicative of a lot of the characters that you would see, right? I would call them characters with moral ambiguity, right? Right? Is this a good guy? Is this a guy you're supposed to root for? Well, the 60s and definitely the 70s had a lot of those characters. And in the 80s, we talked about this with Brad the other day. In the 80s, we saw a return to like this you know, kind of the good guy, right? Focusing on these good guys with not so bad traits. We don't focus on the bad traits. Or if we did, they'll start off kind of like Bill Murray, right? Quentin Tarantino will always talk about Bill Murray being the quintessential, like, right, the bad guy who ends up turning good, right? You seen the movie Scrooged? That's completely right. Stripes. In the 80s, it was just that angle. It's like we didn't like those guys to just stay bad, right? We wanted to show a transformation. But then in the 90s, we went right back to it, right? We reviewed some of those movies, right? We saw King of New York, New Jack City, with the return of that moral ambiguity, right, in the lead characters, right? And almost characters that are, again, villains, but do we root for them? Should we root for them? Do we root for a guy like Thomas Crown? I don't know. I was rooting for him, but I don't know what that said. I mean, it probably says more about me than it does about the character. But yeah, I definitely love the Steve McQueen character, you know, the Thomas Crown character. And you know, it makes sense as to why they would want to remake this movie. It looks like they remade it twice already. Makes sense to me. And you can see here, right? So like, again, this guy is dressed to the nines, even when he's dressed casual, right? He's wearing a cap here, right? This is probably the only time, right? He wears only caps, I believe, in this movie. He doesn't wear a fedora. This is kind of like one of those like high price caps that we talked about maybe with Paul, right? At Lock & Co. You go and you get a $500 cap, or maybe it was Bates & Co. But a $500 baseball cap, you know what I mean? But you look at it and you're like, wow, it fits, right? Meaning the style fits. And obviously he's got the fancy car, he's smoking the cigar, right? Has all the indications of high society, except he's a crook. And you can see, right? If you want to know, it's like, just in case you were curious, you can see the guy's got money, right? He's got it all. And these stills, right? Obviously, what does a guy like that play? He plays chess, right? You know, that's what somebody with his kind of smarts and his kind of affluence would do. They play chess. So everything is here. You know, maybe it's a little bit, you know, corny to some people, but for me, it just, especially when you watch the stills, right? And I talked about that before. When I do these movie reviews and I show stills, it's almost like even better than watching the movie sometimes, because the still just captures, right? Right, gets back to that idea of stillness, right, from the Stoicism. Once you see that still, it almost is more powerful than watching that motion, you know, that video of the movie. So again, some of these photos are in black and white. The movie was not in black and white, but yeah, I think it just looks good, right? The fashion here, that's the thing, beyond the hats, right? Because the hats, depending on whether you like stingy brims or not, and a lot of folks are not, they're not too caring about the stingy brims. I happen to love them, but you know, you might see this and you're like, okay, if you don't like the stingy brims, you can at least appreciate the style, right? Because it's very much like James Bond, at least to me. Obviously, he's got the cars to go with it, right? The suits, the cars, and then obviously, you know, one thing that's going to be is the women, right? In this case, it'll be the leading lady, and we'll get to her in a second. But yeah, well, obviously, what will he play? Polo. Again, it's just very stereotypical, but it works, right? Steve McQueen makes it work, right? You don't go there watching like, all right, this is just corny. Like, it just works. Steve McQueen's able to sell it, and maybe that's just because he's Steve McQueen. He also plays golf, you know? And again, and hopefully as you're watching this, you're paying a little bit attention to the style here, because you know, the wardrobe designers here, the folks that were in charge, it was apparently 3 wardrobe staff. One was dedicated to the staff in general. One was just for Steve McQueen. And another one was just for Faye Dunaway, who played the lead actress. So it could show you the attention to detail that went into the style here. And maybe Steve McQueen, I'm just thinking like, the guy was always known for his impeccable style, right? He was just a stylish guy. I don't know how much help he needed, but you know, again, it's always nice to have help. Again, got the fancy glass, doing all the things, right, that you would see, let's say, a James Bond do. Except, like I said, James Bond is a good guy, right? He may be somebody that, like, you know, sleeps around, but he's definitely a good guy. This guy, Thomas Crown, well, it depends on who you ask whether he's a good guy or not, right? He's almost, he's like Robin Hood, but I don't think he gives the money back per se, right? He's like Robin Hood without the philanthropy. again, here is a shot with the lead actress. I think we'll see definitely a lot more shots, coming up. Just want to make sure. Yeah. So a lot of the scenes that we see Faye Dunaway's character, Vicki Anderson, we see them. We see her with Thomas Crown. Now, there's a good reason for it, right? So Thomas Crown is this millionaire thief, and essentially, Vicki knows that he's behind this. So she works for an insurance agency, right? She works for the agency. Let's see, we got a Thomas Crown is raffish. Okay, I don't know what the term raffish is, Ian. I'm gonna have to look that up. But yeah, I'm gonna trust that that's correct. You definitely have a way with words. I'm gonna go with that. He's raffish. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But he's kind of a scoundrel, right? He's a scoundrel. But he's like a lovable, right? He's like a lovable scoundrel in many ways, right? Like you forgive him for it because he's so like honest about it and so like, you know what I mean, self-aware about the way he is that you kind of have to like give it to him, right? But Vicki Anderson, the female lead in this movie, she's an insurance agency that was insuring the Monet that Thomas stole. So she has a vested interest, right? In finding who stole it and bring them to justice, right? And they make it clear right in the beginning, if you go and you're able to secure this back, this painting, and find out and bring it to justice, you'll get a reward equal to like 10% of the value, which I believe in the movie, the value of the Monet was listed, I think, at 2.66 million, which is a big sum now, but in 1968 terms, man, that's a lot of moolah. Right? So that's a lot of bread, a lot of dough, right? A lot of schmackaroos. So she's obviously very motivated to try to bring Thomas Crown to justice, right? It pretty much, she knows it's him, but she has to go and get proof and actually bring him to justice. So what she does is she tries, to infiltrate by essentially kind of like wooing him, right? Which is, kind of also very James Bondish, right? You have these female villains that are trying to like kill James Bond, right? Or do, something bad to him. And it's kind of like a battle of wits. It's very James Bond in that way. Ian says, unconventional and slightly disreputable, especially in an attractive way. That's exactly right. Definitely. Now that I know the definition, Ian, Thomas Crown is definitely raffish. You know what I mean? And again, in an attractive way. And that's the part that here in the dynamic between Vicki and Thomas Crown is that her intent is to bring Thomas to justice, but she ends up falling for him, right? Like she knows he's a thief. She knows that he's, kind of despicable in that way, that he does this bad thing, but she doesn't fall for him. Like I said, she sees the same honesty, right? And the same, I guess, self-awareness that the viewer is seeing, and she falls for it. Matter of fact, she admires him and his cunning, right? It's very much like one of those things. I'm like, wow, this guy is like. So in many ways, I mean, I don't know. This is a term that you may or may not be familiar with. It's almost like Faye Dunaway's character here, Vicki Anderson, is almost kind of like a sapiosexual, right? Which is somebody that's attracted to intelligence or cunning or some sort of thing like that, right? Maybe that's not the appropriate description of it, but that's what I was thinking about Vicki Anderson's character and why she falls in love with Thomas, right? She falls under his ways, even though she knows that he's very manipulative, right? It's part of his tool set, right? But she still falls for him anyway. Ian says she has a beauty that is rare today. Yes, agreed. And that's the other thing about Vicki Anderson, besides just the natural beauty that, Faye Dunaway obviously has, and this character has, it's just, she's also a hat wearer, right? Right. Out of the two, she's the one that is pretty much wearing the hats most of the time, right? So you'll see that in some of the photos, in the number of stills that she's wearing some sort of headwear. Which, all comes across very elegant, right? Again, I don't know if that's how most insurance adjusters, right, would be, but Vicki Anderson happens to be a very elegant insurance adjuster, right? Or maybe she's good at playing this character, right? She knows the type of woman that maybe somebody like Thomas Crown would fall for, and she's able to play it up, right? And we do get to see some of that, right? Because she has a boss, right? Or at least somebody that appears to be her boss, right? That also works with her at the insurance agency, and it's kind of like permitting her, right, recruiting her to go in there and try to get this, try to bring this man to justice. So she essentially is getting funded, right? So that's probably how she's getting all these fancy clothes and all that stuff, because she's like, listen, Thomas Crown is not going to fall for just some ordinary person. I need to be elegant. I need to be like, really upscale for me to go and charm this guy. Very, very interesting. Very interesting dynamic. And again, it could be hokey to some. To me, the on-screen chemistry, I think, between these two just really, really worked. And again, I really appreciated the hats, right? Again, we don't really cover a lot of hat movies that focus on female characters wearing hats. They might be a little piecemeal. This would be a legitimate hat movie. That if you wanted to focus on a hat movie that was focused on a female character, right? Besides the guy that pulled the heist off, right? I mean, we don't see one of those characters really throughout the remainder of the film. But really, the hat person here throughout this whole film has been Vicki Anderson. And it's just really nice, right? Like it gives her that extra elegance, right? She just pulls it off really nicely. So you can see here, right? So you can see more headwear on Vicki Anderson. This is like she's getting chummy, right, with Thomas Crown, and you're kind of like Thomas really gives off the impression that he is wooed as well, right? It's like obviously this guy probably has, he's not a dummy. Right? I think Vicki even made her intentions really clear right up front. Like, right, this is kind of like, I'm gonna get you. So it's a battle of wits, and that's, I think, part of like that cat and mouse game that it's almost like teasing, right, between these two, and it just works really well. Again, I don't know how cliche this is. In many ways, I'm thinking it is cliche, but I can't really think of a lot of movies that I watch that have the same kind of like this kind of chemistry, I think, right? Like they definitely do this in a lot of movies, but these two seem to pull it off really well. And I don't know if that's just a question of like their acting chops, or maybe they're, who knows? Like I said, a lot of actors have this chemistry because they have a real relationship, right? One example would be Al Pacino. Wow, she just passed away. Anyway, I'm having a brain fart, but you know who the character is. She played Kay. She just passed away. But yeah, they had a nice on-screen chemistry, and part of that was probably because they were actually dating, in the making of The Godfather. So Diane Keaton, there you go, I figured it out. Sorry, Diane Keaton. So Al Pacino and Diane Keaton had a very nice chemistry, but they were really dating. Who knows? I don't know if Faye Dunaway and Steve McQueen were actually dating, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility given Steve McQueen's like reputation, at least my perception of his reputation. It just seems like one of those guys. Like it's like that's not really acting. This guy pretty much is kind of like James Bond or James Bond-ish, right? Maybe Robert Redford would be another guy that would be someone similar, maybe during this time period. But yeah, more shots of Vicki, right? Look at the headwear. Look at the way she wears it with the sunglasses, the whole outfit. Again, every time she's on screen, especially when she's in Thomas Crown's presence, she is impeccable, right? Like you can tell that when she's there talking to her boss, right, or her coworker. I don't know if it's technically her boss. I'm gonna just say it's her boss. She's not she's dressed okay, but she's not super elegant like she is when she was with Thomas Crown. And it kind of begs the question, like she's really falling for this guy, right? Maybe she starts off as a costume, but then the motivation becomes, I really want to get this guy, I want to get this guy, so it's really beautiful. Nathan says she has a commanding appearance. Yeah, right. It like lights up the screen. Like you cannot not look at her, right? Like she has one of those things when she's on screen. And obviously the movie Bombshell is nothing new, but I don't know. There's an elegance. I think that's what Ian mentioned, an elegance to Faye Dunaway that really comes across on screen. And you know, I can't tell you, any more than that. You know, it's just like, just look at the stills, right? But yeah, I agree, Nathan, completely. And again, you see them together in most of these scenes, right? She's got another piece of headwear on, right? And that's the other part of this character, right? Obviously, she would wear it, right? She is essentially going in disguise, right? We talked about the idea of headwear, and in a lot of these movies, that when a character wants to hide their true selves, right? We saw that with Rocky, right? Rocky is a sweetheart, right? He's a gentle man, but he lives in Philadelphia. He boxes for a living. When he's out in the street, especially if he's doing his job as a collector for organized crime, right? A money collector, he has to look the part. He has to look tough, right? So the hat, especially with the hat tilt, is part of that. So I think Faye Dunaway's character here, Vicky, also uses this, you know, as well as we saw early on with the gentleman doing the heist, right? Like they're trying to be undercover and hide their true selves. Ian says that presence adds to her attractiveness. I agree. I agree. I mean, again, it's one of those things where she when you see this photo right here, the way she's looking at him, right? It's just like, yeah, you can't fake, like, yeah, she obviously, this is Faye Dunaway acting, but it almost feels like she can't be really acting. Like it feels like like a really great chemistry. And I don't know, you know, you don't see that very often, right? Especially when you watch as many movies as I watch, and you guys probably are very similar, especially if you watch the show. You know, you see that how many times you see two characters, right? This like you know, they're supposed to be courting each other, and you're like, I'm not feeling, like, I don't see it, right? Like they look like they're acting. These two really have a great chemistry on screen, and yeah, it's just fantastic. I mean, I have no idea how they were casted, right? And who was in charge of casting, but whatever it did, it worked, right? Because these are they're very believable, and yeah, it's just the outfits, right? Besides obviously Steve McQueen, Thomas Crown's outfits, it's like the outfits that Vicki Anderson pulls off. You know, you're like, of course, how could Thomas Crown not go and pay attention to her? Right? Like, you'd be dumb not to, right? And obviously, he's a ballsy guy, right? He knows what he's trying to do, and he's still going to do it, because this is essentially another heist that he's pulling off, right? He's going to steal her affection, right? You can see that, right? Like he's like, I'm not scared. I'm not scared to go steal that Monet. I'm not scared to steal your heart, right? I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get away with it. It's just, you know, you're seeing it happen, and you're like, and she probably knows it's going to happen, like it's happening to her, and she still goes along with it. So in many ways, they're very compatible that way. She knows what's at stake here. She's there to do a job. She's in risky business, just like he is right now, and maybe that's maybe the other part that they see in each other, right? They see the other person willing to take those risks, and they're like, wow, this is my soulmate, man. Yeah. There you go. This is kind of like a peach. It looks like a peach outfit here. Again, look at her skin tone. Look at this outfit. It's like perfection. I mean, I'm like, how does one, and obviously people are in charge of doing this, right? These are costume designers, but I don't know. I'm like, I look at this, I'm like, this is again, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's like when I look at architecture. When I was with Ian and with Paul in London, looking at the architecture, right? We were looking up, and seemingly every building was like a work of art, right? But I didn't know, because I didn't know anything about architecture. I just know that I'm looking at is very special and good looking, right? It's the same thing with Faye Dunaway here and the outfits. It's another pairing. Again, you see this couple down the street, and you're like, yeah, they were made for each other, right? Look at the outfits, you know. And then obviously she has the headwear, he does not. But man, it just works. Like every still is just like every still feels like it should be in a magazine, like a fashion magazine, right? Like there are two models that are like paired together, and they're like, yeah, we might as well be selling these outfits, right, for some magazine. Yeah, that's how it feels to me, like a photo shoot. This is kind of like I don't know what you call this, maybe lilac or periwinkle, maybe periwinkle. Again, another outfit. This one actually has that tall crown, and a little bit more of that, like, it almost looks like a periwinkle indie hat, right? In many ways, right? But very elegant, and she just looks great, man. I just can't. I don't know how much more times I want to say it, but I want to keep saying it. Pardon my my repetition. Yeah, Ian, exactly. I learned that very, very quickly. Always look upwards in London because you're going to see some awesome stuff. Yeah, shout out to London. Really, really great city. Let's see what else. And you guys will have to pardon the number of photos. I just couldn't, like, every time I would go. This is again that peach outfit. Again, this is probably more very similar, maybe a little bit more zoomed out version of that peach outfit. You can see here, right? She's on there. She's got a camera. They're at I believe they're at a polo event here, and she's in this. I don't know. Is this a Jaguar or a Porsche? I don't know. It might be a Jaguar. I don't know if Porsche has ever come to that length, but she's in this, like, fancy, obviously ultra rich guy's car, and she looks like she belongs, right? She looks like she belongs there, and it just goes so well, right? You believe it that she's gonna snag him, right? So, like, you're sitting there rooting for Vicky to go and put Thomas in jail. You kind of believe it in many ways, right? Even though Thomas Crown's a savvy guy, you're seeing what you're seeing from her is like an ultra performance. So it's believable. You can see here that headwear. Again, I don't know what exactly this would be called. Maybe a bonnet, right? But it just looks great. Looks elegant, paired with the, like I said, with the eyes, the skin tone, and with the earrings. The whole thing just works, and you gotta love it. Like I said, I know nothing. I'm not a fashion expert, but I'm just like, when I know I know elegance when I see it, I guess. And she's just very elegant. This is a black and white photo. I think we saw the same photo. Pardon the repetition here. This looks like a legitimate photo shoot now. And again, impeccable. So some of these black and whites are just, it looks like just a photo shoot for the movie. Makes sense to me. So you can see here in the headwear, just headwear all throughout for Faye Dunaway. And look at that. I mean, that face right there, like that still right there is just like classic movie, like Vixen, like leading lady, right? Like, it's just an elegant look that Faye Dunaway has. This is at the polo game. Again, this time from behind, so you can see some of the back of that headwear that Faye Dunaway is wearing. Again, sorry for all the Faye Dunaway photos. I just, like, every single one, I was like, oh, yeah, I got to include this. I got to include this. This is that kind of periwinkle outfit, right? And this time she's sitting next to her boss, I guess, I think would be her boss, or at least her coworker at the insurance agency, Eddie Malone, right? Played by Paul Burke. And Paul Burke also wears a fedora, right? In this particular scene, he's not wearing it, right? But he's not a bad dressed guy, right? In many respects, you can kind of see a little bit of jealousy out of Eddie Malone, right? Like, he's seeing his coworker, right? Who knows? Maybe she, he probably is attracted to to Vicky as well, and he's kind of a little bit jealous, right? And also very angry, right? Because essentially, he sees what's happening, that she's falling for him, right? And he's like, "You're gonna blow this, right?" But at that point, it's too late, right? Like, it's just like the wheels are in motion. They got to see it through. So they're still meeting, right? She's giving him information about what's going on and what's going to happen. But, every single time it almost looks like he's angry, right? It's probably just jealousy as well as frustration that they're not going to bring this guy to justice, right? He's not really believing that she's going to be able to pull this off. And this is, Paul Burke and a detective here in their hats, right? This is Eddie Malone. His character, again, I believe he's Vicky's superior at the insurance agency, but I don't know that for sure. I don't know if I remember if they stated that, but it seemed like he was the guy calling the shots at the insurance agency, right? He was the one that offered Vicky the job and the reward, right, for being able to put Thomas Brown to justice. So I just assumed that he was her superior. But you can see nice little stingy brim on Eddie Malone, and you'll see that throughout the movie, right? It's a stingy brim extravaganza, you know, at least relatively speaking, right? Compared to a lot of other movies that you would see a stingy brim in. Like, this is chock full. Now, this is, I believe, Eddie Malone as well as Vicky again, right? She's still pretty elegant here. She doesn't have a hat on, but Eddie Malone's got a hat, right? Nice wide band of a stingy brim. I believe this is a straw here. And, but look at that ribbon. Look at that ribbon on Eddie Malone's straw here, right? It looks very sharp, right? It looks really good. It's almost like, you know, like if this was a different time period, he could have worn a boater, right? In this instance, and look completely, you know, in place, you know, in a different time, right? Maybe during the 20s and 30s, right? In the, the John Dillinger days, right? Shout out to John Dillinger and Public Enemies. And so, yeah, she's meeting with him to kind of give him the updates. But yeah, every single time he's getting the updates, it almost seems like Eddie Malone's losing more hope, right? He's kind of like, man, this is not going well. This is another stingy brim by Eddie Malone. This is another meeting, right? You can tell here it's a public area. Looks like a park. And again, every time you're seeing Eddie Malone, he does not look confident, right? You know, Vicky is kind of like smitten, right? So she's like smiling and she's like, I got this in the bag, right? Like, I got him. Also, I'm kind of in love, so that's probably giddy for that reason as well. But yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic, right? Obviously, the dynamic between Vicky and Thomas, but also the contrasting dynamic between Vicky and Eddie Malone, you know, her boss, right? This is kind of the very like similar scene, but obviously a much up close shot of the, you know, of the fedora. And then what can you tell here, right? Now, this is something that if you're in the group chat, in my board of directors, the triple band. He's got a triple band, right? Now, it looks like a very narrow band, right? A very narrow ribbon. But to me, that's a triple band right there. Again, unless I'm not seeing it right. That is a triple band. Ian says that car is a Porsche or possibly a Ferrari. Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. You know, again, I consider myself a car guy, but maybe not so much for Porsches and Ferraris. This has never been something that I was ever going to try to acquire. So I just never did a whole lot of research on them, but great cars. And Nathan concurs, triple hat band. Exactly. Triple hat band. And it looks and it works, right? Right. We talked about with, if you guys are in the Facebook groups with Nathan and myself, you know, or if you've seen the show where Nathan unboxed his PJ Murphy and Son, you saw his double band PJ Murphy and Son hat, which looks really good. It actually a contrasting color, right? The two separate colors on that band. It works really well. And then I also mentioned when I was out in London, I believe it was at Bates & Co., where I saw the double band. I could be, no, it probably wasn't Bates & Co.'s. Maybe it was Layard's or Thomas Farthing. I think that was it. Paul mentioned this and I just completely forgot. He mentioned this literally the other day, but I believe it was Thomas Farthing. But he can always correct me later on, or you guys can if you remember. But yeah, I remember we went and saw that double band. Ian, maybe you remember, but maybe it was at Thomas Farthing. But yeah, it looked really good, right? So in all the instances, and now we see a triple band in this movie, and now you can confirm it still looks good, even without the contrasting color, right? Maybe if you saw a contrasting color, maybe a kind of a blue, gray, blue combination, or gray, blue, gray, maybe that will also look really good. But it has that high crown, right? And the crown still looks pretty high, even though you got a triple band on there. And you know, it kind of works, right? It kind of works with the outfit. And I know some of you guys are not a big fan of that look, of that stingy brim, but you know, this Trilby, right? But I think it works, right? It definitely is period appropriate. So yeah, just a sharp looking guy. Maybe not as sharp as millionaire or multi-millionaire Thomas Crown, but Eddie Malone's not a badly dressed guy, right? Especially maybe because he's around Vicky, right? Who knows? I don't think they really explored that, but you always get the sense that maybe Eddie was a little jealous. And maybe that's why he kind of dressed up, right? A little bit more. Yeah, Nathan, he pulls it off great. Yeah, I agree. I agree for a non-multimillionaire insurance adjuster, right? Maybe a guy that does pretty well himself, but he's no Thomas Crown. But yeah, he's a pretty sharply dressed guy himself. This is kind of just a scene where Thomas Crown and Eddie Malone finally meet. You can see, right? There are smiles on two people. There's smiles on three people here, right? Everybody except Eddie Malone is smiling here. Eddie Malone is like, "You thief, you're a scoundrel, and we're gonna get you." And right, Irwin, who's played by Jack Weston. If you guys know Jack Weston, I know Jack Weston. I think a lot of people know him from the movie Rad. He also was what would you call it? The club owner in Dirty Dancing. What was it, club that they were at, or summer resort? I think it was a summer resort. He was the owner at the end. So a lot of people know him from those. At least I do, from those two 80s movies. But obviously 1968 was a lot younger, and he was one of the four men that helped pull off the heist. So he's there. He's an accomplice of Thomas, and Thomas is obviously smiling. He's playing it cool as a cucumber, and Vicky is just admiring Thomas's cool and calmness here, right? You can see that sly smile that Vicky's wearing, but Eddie is not smiling at all, right? Like he's all business, right? He's not falling for the charm because he's obviously not, he's not privy to the charm of Thomas Crown, but Vicky is, and certainly Irwin is. Yeah, Dirty Dancing. There you go. Hopefully I said that right. But yeah, regardless of what I said, it was Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. Yeah, he was the summer resort owner. Yeah, so that was Jack Weston. And I think we'll see some more photos of Jack in a little bit. But yeah, you can see this is kind of one of those pivotal moments, right? For me, there were a couple pivotal moments, actually several, but one was when Thomas Crown first met Vicky, right? And you can see that chemistry, and you can see how they were doing. It was almost like a Al Pacino meets Robert De Niro in the movie Heat, right? If you remember that classic scene, right, where they're like two adversaries kind of going at it, but then there's that extra twist because they're actually chemistry, right? Like physical attraction there, right? That obviously did not exist between Pacino and De Niro, at least as far as I know, right? So yeah, it reminded me that moment when they met was very much like that. And this is another kind of similar moment, right? Between, Thomas Crown and Eddie Malone. And this one kind of plays off a little bit more like Pacino and De Niro, except, obviously Steve McQueen, Paul Burke is not at that kind of Steve McQueen level, right? It's not as iconic as De Niro meets Pacino. So, but yeah, Jack Weston had me laughing here because all he kept doing was like repeating every slick thing that Thomas would say, and just saying, "Hey, that was a good one." So he was just playing right into it, right? Like he was nervous up until Thomas Crown showed up. He's like, "Yep," it's almost like when from Pulp Fiction, right? When you find out the wolf is coming, right? When you found out Winston Wolf is coming, you're like, okay, the wolf's got it. He's got it covered. Another black and white scene. Again, this is that same scene that we talked about before with the triple hat band. But this one's in black and white. Again, just impeccable. Right? Like I said, this looks like it could come right out of a magazine, like a fashion magazine. Here's another shot. I don't remember where this is, but you can see Eddie Malone wearing a straw here with a nice, pretty thick ribbon. It's kind of a trilby-ish shaped, right? And then you can see like the hairdo on Faye Dunaway. Wow, just really elegant, right? She has this like blue outfit on with what looks like a pink top and these white earrings, and like, right, the smile, the eyes, the everything. Just elegant, elegant, elegant. And this is like right early in the movie, right, when Irwin Weaver, played by Jack Weston, his character is being recruited, right, by Thomas Crown, right? Thomas Crown has the light shining in the face of each of the guys that are going to pull off the heist because he doesn't want them to know who he is and what he looks like, right? He's just giving them instructions, kind of checking them out. And you can see in his hand, right, a very, very nice stingy brim fedora in the hand of Jack Weston, right? He wears it up until he gets into the room and then takes it off to be polite, right? And just really, I really like that fedora. You can see the crown shape there. He's got the teardrop crown, right? And the two front dents, right? Which, according to Kevin, is not something that's very common, right? To see a stingy brim with a teardrop, right? I forget what model it was of Stetson that he had pointed out that Kevin had pointed out specifically was a stingy brim with a teardrop crown, and it stood out because of that feature. Kevin said it wasn't very common. So who knows? Maybe this is a Stetson because it does seem to be a stingy brim with that teardrop, and maybe that's the way we've identified it. Right? I have no idea. I'm completely speculating, but I did cue in on that fedora. I really liked it. Right? It's got the red feather on the side with the black band, just really elegant, goes really well with his outfit. And, you know, obviously Jack's a bigger guy, but still looks pretty sharp in that outfit. So you can see here, right, when they're actually pulling off the heist, he's got this, yeah, I guess a straw, right? I would just call it a straw trilby, right? Also with the thick band. We've seen a pattern here. All except the triple band had a thick band, but the triple band was essentially three thin bands that kind of look like right together made a big fat single band. But yeah, you can see here that band has kind of that contrasting color. You know, it looks really good, right? It almost functions as kind of like a triple band, except the middle one is a lot thinner than the other two colors, right? You got the blue and then what looks like either burgundy or red, and another contrasting blue. It just really looks really good. You know, you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of straw hats, but it doesn't mean I can't admire a nice one. So yeah, looks really good here. And this is just a scene where all the guys are on their payphone, right? Again, waiting instructions, waiting the go signal from Thomas Crown, who they've never met, or at least they don't aware that they've met, right? Like they're working for an anonymous person to try to get a payday. This is another, you know, photo. This is kind of a little bit later on when he's pulling off the getaway. I don't know why I cued in on this photo because he doesn't have a hat on, but I think this is just, you know, just seemed like it was right to show. Okay, this is where I got to kind of take a little bit of a step back because there was another motivation, obviously, behind this film, or at least nice little kind of bonus, right? When I figured out that this was going to be the film, I knew that Steve McQueen was known for wearing what's now known as a Harrington G9 jacket, right? Which, right, made by a company in Manchester, England, right, called Barracuda, right? And Barracuda developed the G9 jacket, right? It just so happened this is a Barracuda Harrington G9 jacket that I was able to acquire, you know, months ago. Right, it's one of my favorite jackets. I actually had it for sale, but now I don't think I'm going to sell it. Right, like it's not exactly my size. Right, my size is more like 46. This is kind of 44, and it's like a small 44. But I am planning to lose a little bit of weight, so maybe I'll be able to kind of fit better into this jacket. But it doesn't look completely off, and I like it, and I really like this jacket. And I knew that Steve McQueen was known for wearing this jacket, right? Like I even call it many times the Steve McQueen jacket, right? And it has a very, very interesting history, right? This jacket, let's see here, we got, Ian says, according to AI, a stingy brim fedora with a teardrop was common in the 1960s. All right. Well, thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. Again, well, there you go. At least we can see the wardrobe was true to the time. And maybe when Kevin mentioned that, he was talking about more modern times, right? So yeah, that's a good tidbit to know. Yeah, thank you, AI. I appreciate it, and thank you, Ian, for adding that. But yeah, so this jacket was something that I knew Steve McQueen was known for, and I bought it because of Steve McQueen. I just didn't know that we were going to actually see it in the movie. And you see, and I don't even know what really the purpose of this scene was other than showing you that this guy is a he's a jet-setting millionaire, right? Like he's not even in, this is not even really a plane. It's more like a glider, right? It's not really a plane with a motor. It's a glider. And it seems like he's meeting up with a very exotic woman, and he like flies into this field. And he's wearing this blue Barracuda G9 jacket, right? And I was like blown away, because I was like, holy cow, he's wearing it in the film, right? He, like, Steve McQueen was known more so for wearing this about town, right? Like it was like one of those jackets that he was associated with when he'd be about in town. But the fact that he's wearing it in the movie was like an extra bonus, right? I was like, wow, what a find, like what a coincidence. And I was secretly hoping that it was going to be the case. I was like, well, what are the chances that he's wearing the jacket in the movie? Sure enough, he is, and he's got a blue one, right? The one that I have on, right? This one is kind of like it was sold to me as a brown jacket, but it's actually more of an olive color in my mind. In person, it's more olive looking than brown, but who knows? Like I said, I'm not the best with colors anyway. Steve McQueen was not necessarily known for wearing a navy blue one, like the one he has here in this movie, in this scene, but he's more known for another, like a beige or white or something like that. And I'll show you guys a photo in a little bit. But when I saw the scene, and you can see the jacket here, obviously it fits him way better, right? He's definitely a lot more in shape guy. But the jacket just, wow. And you can see obviously the girl that is greeting him, as he lands. She's kind of chiding him for, like, doing the stuff that he does. But yeah, you can see the outfit, right? He's not in a three-piece suit, but he looks every much bit like elegant and like a jet setting, right? Like a James Bond type of guy in these casual clothes. And, I mean, that jacket is part of it, right? The jacket is a really good looking jacket, right? Just a heads up, this jacket was developed in 1937. Now, it wasn't called the Harrington back then, right? It was just called the G9, right? I believe it was there were two brothers. I believe they were called the Miller brothers, and they developed the G9 jacket as essentially like a rainproof all-weather type jacket that was primarily linked with golf, right? That's what G9 stood for. G stood for golf. 9 stood for the 9 holes in golf, right? And you'll see, right? And we'll get to some more photos about like how iconic this jacket is, not just because of Steve McQueen. You can see more angles of this jacket, and you can see right underneath that jacket, you can see that plaid, I guess I'm just going to call it plaid liner inside. That is just, I guess, the signature of the G9 jacket. As far as I'm aware, they all have, right, all the G9 jackets have the that plaid, or at least the ones that I've seen. And then you can see this here. You can see more of the plaid here in this shot. And you can see here, right, like this is just a cool outfit, right? So this collar, that's one of the reasons why I like this jacket. Just one of the reasons is this collar. It's functional, but it also just looks cool, right? Like you pop the collar and it just looks right. Like he's got those sunglasses there. Obviously, I don't have those sunglasses, but I don't even know what brand those sunglasses are, but they look cool. Like it looks like this guy is a somebody, even in casual dress. Ian says, a common jacket in London fashion with Doc Martens. Yes. This is also one of the, I guess, more notorious pairings of this jacket. I believe, Ian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this was kind of in many ways a skinhead uniform. As far as I read, that during, I guess, the 70s, I want to say, apparently skinheads in London would wear these. And I see Doc Martens were something that were very popular with the skinhead crowd as well. Again, I'm not as aware. Definitely correct me if I'm wrong. This is just what I've read. But I am a little bit familiar about with like the skinhead groups. But Doc Martens and apparently the Harrington G9 jacket were kind of their uniform. Interesting. I mean, a little bit more notorious, right? Pairing, maybe not as as iconic and what people want to focus on, but it is a thing, right? Like, I mean, I don't know why they chose that jacket. Maybe because, well, it's a functional jacket, right? So like the idea behind the Doc Martens is that they're working class, but functional. And the G9 jacket is just a jacket that lets you move. Like it's a very like do it all kind of jacket. Ian says, yes, the later skinheads, yes. Okay. Thank you for confirming, Ian. Again, I don't want to propagate bad information, but, I did read about that. And I was just like, all right, well, I don't know if, I'll mention that, but I'm glad you pointed it out, because I'm like, okay, let's make sure we bring that in, because I do want to make sure I'm accurate. But yeah, like I mentioned, Steve McQueen wasn't known for like favoring this color when he was out and about. What he was really known for was more this color, right? This is kind of like a beige Harrington G9 jacket, right? Just looks every bit as good, right? And I guess with his skin tone and his like lighter hair color, right? I think maybe it's a little bit more favorable, right? With a nice white or cream colored shirt and maybe sweater, right? Maybe maybe it's more of a cream. But yeah, just a really good looking jacket. I remember seeing this jacket. I'm like, I gotta get me one of those. And then when I saw the prices for them brand new, I was like, well, maybe I don't need to get me one of those, right? Because it was like, I think brand new, they're like, I want to say $400 to $500 if you buy them like from, I guess, Barracuda, right directly from the brand. The brand was acquired, I believe, by another company in 2012, just like a lot of companies, right? Right, that's kind of like in line with the great financial crisis. But yeah, they still make the jackets, and as far as I know, the quality's still there. I have no idea how old this one is. This is like one of the older, I now got around to like dating this jacket, right? And like I do with a lot of my vintage hats. My assumption is that it's not vintage, which is fine by me. Like I said, I wanted it because it was more symbolic. It was like iconic. And then the more research I did into it, I started realizing that, well, in London, obviously Barracuda came out in 1937. Sorry, not in London, in Manchester. In Manchester, Barracuda developed this in 1937, this G9 jacket. McGregor was a company, a US-based company that developed a very similar jacket that became iconic as well, but it was more kind of like a copycat jacket, right? It was called the McGregor Drizzler, and it was iconically worn by James Dean, this candy apple red. Again, it's a Harrington style jacket, right? It's not a G9. It's a kind of like I guess some would consider a copycat, but McGregor Drizzler is a very, very fine jacket. Right? It's not obviously not the first in this style, but this, especially with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, like this jacket is every bit iconic, right? Now maybe every bit is not the right term, but it's iconic, and Rebel Without a Cause, what a movie. You can see it here from a different angle. You can see, obviously, the collar is a little different, has more of a traditional collar, as opposed to, I forget what kind of collar you refer to this as, but there are definitely subtle differences, but the general style became known as the Harrington. And this is just another, I guess, more of a stock photo of the Harrington G9, the Barracuda, so you guys could see, right? You can see the plaid. You can see kind of like the pocket style, right? So this is kind of like, this might be more of the lines of that cream color that Steve McQueen favored in real life. And in terms of famous wearers, right, before Steve McQueen, right, you had Elvis Presley in the movie King Creole, right, wore a G9 jacket, right, by Barracuda, right? And you can see some of the photos are in black and white here, but you can definitely tell the plaid jacket, right? You can see kind of like the outline there, and you can see kind of like the silhouette, right? It comes through, and it was a jacket that before Elvis Presley done that, I think Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, which were like obviously celebrities of the day, they popularized it because they were golf players, and this became like the jacket you wore if you were to go out golfing. And then obviously some of the more bad boy kind of image types started wearing them, and it became more synonymous with a badass jacket, right? And then ultimately Steve McQueen wore it. So I'll show you a couple more photos of Elvis Presley in King Creole. But man, also, like, he doesn't have the collar popped here, right? He has the collar down, but it still looks sharp, right? Still functional. Just really great jacket. Here's another photo here from King Creole. You can see definitely more of the plaid. And then, right, so the name Harrington really didn't stick until the early to mid 60s, right? So there was a soap opera apparently on television called Peyton Place, and it starred Ryan O'Neal as a character called Rodney Harrington. And then there was a department store that decided to run with the name, right? So they called the jacket a Harrington jacket. Uh, um, and the name stuck, right? Like everybody knew this show. I guess it was the show to watch back in that day. And the jacket, even though it was called the G9 originally, it became known ultimately as the Harrington G9 because of this Ryan O'Neal character, Rodney Harrington. Right, and he starred in that show with Mia Farrow. You can see Mia Farrow there. Ultimately, Mia Farrow married Woody Allen. So just a little tidbit, a little factoid. But these weren't the only celebrities. Even modern day celebrities have worn the Harrington G9 jacket, and these are just a few of them that I can call here. You got from the top left, that's Jason Statham. Now, the gentleman in the top right, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's Tom Hardy, a very young-looking Tom Hardy with a lot of hair, a lot more hair than you probably are used to seeing him with. I don't remember what film that is, but that's definitely a Harrington jacket, a G9, a Barracuda. And then the bottom left, you can see the iconic Daniel Craig, right? You can see that those kind of cream or beige colors being the ones that are favored, right? And I'm guessing that Elvis Presley as well as Steve McQueen had to have some influence on that. And then last but not least is the late, great Christopher Reeve, who played Superman. And you can see that Harrington jacket, that Barracuda Harrington G9 jacket. Again, all these gentlemen are rocking a beige or cream colored jacket, at least as far as I can tell. So again, iconic. But that's not the only gentleman. I did find one more photo of Bradley Cooper, right? Of A Star Is Born and so many other movies, right? And he actually is wearing a navy blue version, very similar to the one that was done by Steve McQueen in the Thomas Crown Affair. So there you go. I mean, again, I had no idea when I had chose to watch this movie that I was going to come across, right? Like I knew Steve McQueen was known for this jacket, but I thought of it always as he wore this jacket in real life, not necessarily on screen. So it was just an extra bonus, right? That I was able to see him wear the jacket in this movie. And it just happened to be a movie that I enjoyed, right? Another hat movie. And I believe those are all the photos that I had to show you guys. I have no idea if that was enjoyable for you. I have no idea if that motivates you to watch this movie. I do recommend it, right? If you're even remotely interested in in stingy brim fedoras, right? If you're interested in kind of the heist movie, right? If you're a fan of Steve McQueen, right? Obviously, if you're a fan of Steve McQueen, you've probably already seen the Thomas Crown Affair many times, probably. But if you're a fan of the way Faye Dunaway looks in this movie, which I wouldn't blame you, right? It was hard to not stare at Faye Dunaway in this movie. And then obviously, if you're a fan of the Harrington G9 jacket like I am, right, you definitely want to check that out if just to see Steve McQueen rocking a jacket he helped make famous, right? So yeah, that was my review or my coverage of A Thomas Crown Affair. Again, as far as I know, the original film, 1968, right? Maybe at some point, maybe depending on the feedback that I get, I'll try to cover the next remake that came out in 1999 with Pierce Brosnan. And who knows, maybe a few years down or whatnot, maybe sooner, once it's finally released, I'll cover Michael B. Jordan's the remake that he's going to star in. I think they're filming it now, or they just filmed it, but they're set to release, according to what I heard, is set to release in 2027. So it's going to be a little bit, right? It's going to be a little bit before I'm able to get access to stills and things like that. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm a big fan of Michael B. Jordan. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I know I did. It was a pleasant surprise. right? Yeah, always it kind of takes me back to like watching Lawless, right? I had never seen Lawless, but the way it was recommended, right? I think Josh and Ian both put a recommendation for the movie Lawless, and I end up wow, I'm so glad that I watched the movie and I covered it. So yeah, I wanted to thank Nathan for joining me on screen. I also want to thank my man, one of my faithful moderators, Ian, for joining me in the chat. And thank you guys all for viewing, and either viewing live or if you guys view in syndication. And I'm just going to tell you, keep supporting the channel if you can. I'm at 94 subscribers. You guys already know I'm so close. I'm about 6 subscribers away from doing a video on this Knox custom, this Knox custom made in Canada, right? Not the best looking fedora, maybe something that you can refurbish, right? Could be a good first fedora, maybe a good 100th fedora, maybe a good fedora for you to restore, right? Or give away, right? Maybe you have somebody that really always wanted to have a fedora but doesn't have the coin, and maybe you can gift it. I'll work out the shipping situation with you if you end up winning this hat. But that'll happen after I reach 100 subscribers. So go ahead and support the channel if you like. But if you don't, you know what I'm going to say, right? Even if you don't want to support the channel or any of the good folks that happen to find their way on this channel, right? The one thing you got to do, thank you, Ian. Thank you, my friend. Hope you have a great day. The one thing you got to do, right, is non-negotiable, or else we'll get, well, I don't know. I'm not going to send, if I had the option, I'm not going to send Faye Dunaway your way. She'd probably go my way, right? Like I probably wouldn't do that. No, but I don't even know if that's the case. But maybe I'll send Thomas Crown, right? And he won't do anything bad to you. Maybe he'll outsmart you. He'll steal some of your artwork, not because he needs to, but because he's, a little bit of a scoundrel like that. He likes to test himself. But otherwise, what he'll do is just outsmart you and make you subscribe to the channel, right? But the one thing you got to do no matter what is you got to stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody. Ciao.